Hello everyone and welcome back to DCM, Doritos, Connections, and Mountain Dew, your favorite local video game TV show. I am your host, Howard Miller.
And I'm your co-host, David Scrivani.
And welcome to the news segment. First things first, today in our news segment we have Nintendo announcing Super Mario 3D Collection. A collection of past 3D Mario titles including Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. While fans were happy because they feel like Nintendo finally listened to their requests of making their old collection brought to next generation, they are very concerned because the game itself, will be discontinued in March. This March, less than 6 months, both physically and digitally. Scalpers are already pricing the game at £200 or $264 for a pre-order on eBay, leaving fans wondering why would they even have a timed release for their own product.
Also in the news today, at yesterday's Ubisoft Foward event, they have announced finally, after 8 years I believe, that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, will finally be re-released on current-gen consoles after being delisted from this all-digital stores for those 8 years. In 2014, I believe they did. So now people will have a chance to finally play this, frankly, phenomenal beat-em-up game, which I believe you will agree with me on that.
I'll fight with anyone. It's one of the best.
It really is.
EA is being a bad company. Again, in their newest release title, UFC 4, reviewers didn't find this feature, but apparently on release day they added this feature into the title where in between matches they would add real life ads, as seen in the screen I'm about to show on there. After the fight, the round break in the game, just like real UFC fighting, there's literally just an ad that would update to whatever ad is paying EA. So you can see right down with the picture, it's Amazon series The Boys Season 2 premiere. And people were outraged because the review copies didn't have it, so that means they put it in the day it came out. They've since taken out the ads and apologized, but knowing EA, they'll do something bad in probably about 3 months.
What? Also announced at Ubisoft's Forward event, a remake of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time has been announced. This seems odd to me because when's the last time we got a Prince of Persia game?
The reboot in 2008.
2008, over 10 years, and the first Prince of Persia media we've gotten, not including the movie, which I believe was 2012, or was that 2008?
There was a sequel to that movie. I think it was 2011. I might be wrong.
That movie. Point is, the first thing we get of the Prince of Persia franchise in at least 10 years is a remake of frankly, of a pretty decent game, but I'm surprised they went for the remake route instead of an entirely new game. Though I suppose success has been seen in that area with the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, and now we have Crash 4, It's About Time. But it seems odd to me. Hopefully, somewhere down the line, we'll get another Prince of Persia game, brand new.
In other news, Cartoon Network's Adult Swim programming block and anime streaming site Crunchyroll have partnered together to release an anime about the video game franchise, the Sega-beloved cult classic, Shenmue. Shenmue only having 3 games in the past 20 years. The first one was released in 1999. I'll put the right date over this. Was released and was a financial failure as it was at the time the most expensive game ever, although it did revolutionize open world gaming and the QuickTime event. They have literally announced nothing other than the fact that it's a retelling, a mature adaptation of the first game with little bits of the second game, and will have a 13-episode run. The dub will premiere on Adult Swim, and worldwide it will premiere on Crunchyroll. No release date given. Welcome back to what we've been playing. I have been playing Yakuza 0, released in the States in 2017 by publisher Sega, of all people, the guy with Sonic, is a prequel to the long-running series, starring series protagonist Kazuma Kiryu and Goro Majima as they deal with the Dojima's power struggle to purchase the mysterious empty lot from separate angles. While Kiryu is framed for murder on this lot, Majima comes with redemption from killing the owner of this lot. The story is filled with so many twists and emotional moments in this game due to its well-acted story and dialogue. And the gameplay is a whole nother story, as it's an open world game where you explore 1980s Tokyo and Osaka, Japan, where instead of shooting things like most games, like in GTA, you punch things with your fist, like a man. Featuring a robust fighting system with over-the-top flashy finishers, and if fighting isn't your thing, you can then switch to doing all sorts of mini-games and side quests galore with multiple side mechanics, such as racing pocket cars, managing real estate, running a cabaret club, and even being the disco king as you dance against Michael Jackson. Even messing around the city will reward you in sub-stories, which will give you prizes, 2 hidden bosses, or you can just karaoke and watch goofy mini-games. While it's a serious crime thriller, it can also just be a little goofy when you want it to be, or be cathartic when you give a street punk a powerbomb. Experience the actual Yakuza-approved crime thriller on Xbox One, PS4, and PC.
I've been playing recently the Doom Megawad entitled No End in Sight. Developed by the 3 Doom the Way It Did contributors Emil Brundage, Zazer Acheron, and Christopher Lutz. It is a kind of a recreation of the original Doom by these 3 guys. They went in with the mindset going, if it were to make Doom today, how would they make it? And let me tell you, it works phenomenally. There is some of the coolest level design in a classic Doom that I've ever seen. And boy, does it get hard. I was blasting through it, and then all of a sudden, bam! I got to this one level, and I only completed it today. I've been stuck on it for like a month, and I completed it right before coming to this studio. So that's my that's my accomplishment for today, and it'll be the last accomplishment I have today as well. Currently, Doom No End in Sight came out in 2016, and is currently available for anyone who owns the newest Unity ports that Bethesda has released for Doom and Doom 2. So if you have Doom on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, or even on Steam, you can currently play No End in Sight free of charge. You can play it free of charge anyways, because most Doom Megawads are free anyways.
Hello everybody and welcome back once again to the DCM show, your favorite local gaming show in New England. I'm your host Howard, and today I have with me is a world-class speedrunner and Twitch streamer, SHiFT. How you doing tonight, SHiFT?
Hey man, good to be here.
Perfect. So I'm going to speedrun my way through all these questions, so you can just take your time. I'm the one who will be talking fast.
Sure.
So first, you are a world record speedrunner. So what exactly is a speedrunner when it comes to the world of video games?
Well, speedrunning began with the simple idea, how can we beat a game as quickly as possible? Because when you play, I guess you look back to the early 2000s, you have all these different platformers and single-player games before multiplayer online was a big widespread thing, and you think, like, how can I get more playtime out of a game like this? So, like, when I was a kid, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I used to play the same game 20 times because I didn't have a lot of video games, and I guess that just kind of feeds the idea, how quickly can I beat this? So that was the origin of essentially the idea of speedrunning. But nowadays, since, it's been like 20 years, people have, like, why are we still playing the same game over and over again? Well, it's because we're now doing it for sport. Like, we do it to compete with one another, compare times, see how low the games can go, see what the potential is of these games, stuff like that. Just pushing a game as far as it can possibly go for sport.
So how do you claim a valid speedrun? What's the process behind that?
It depends on the game, but the majority of the games require you to be on an official console. So there's no there is a term in video gaming called emulation, where a lot of the time people can use they can use some kind of a PC program that was designed to emulate an original console. That's usually unacceptable for most speedruns. So you need the original hardware for most of them, and you need some kind of a device that can capture your gameplay, so like a video recorder, but so you can record your raw feed of the games, like they call that a capture card in speedrunning. And you also, a lot of time, you need audio quality, so you can actually hear the game being played. all these things are to prevent cheating, because you can, there's a term called splicing in speedrunning, where people can, cut together a perfect run without having to actually do the full run in one shot. And obviously, like, the problem with that is the idea of speedrunning is to beat it in one go as quickly as possible, but the potential of like cheating or splicing a run is there if there's not adequate video proof or audio proof. So that's typically what people look for, is acceptable video quality and audio quality of your run.
So you are the current world record holder for speedrunning the 2003 platformer SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, which, if I am correct, you can tell me if I'm wrong. You're right now at 48 minutes and 43 seconds?
Now it's at 37, excuse me.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Oh, geez.
Because I think the one that you might be thinking of is I got one and then another one the day after when I got that last one. I don't know how I did it 2 days in a row, but it was, yeah.
Okay. All right. So why did you choose this game of all games?
It's more like the other way around, right? I rediscovered this game through like speedrun videos. Like the guy who ran this game in the past, Cole, he was the world record holder from I think 2013 to 2014 on and off. Mostly it was him. And he had a lot of videos on his YouTube channel of him speedrunning the game. And there was also another runner, Hazel. She's a tasser, or like a tool-assisted speedrunner who tries to push the game as fast as possible using emulation tools to test the potential of the game, essentially. That's a whole different thread of speedrunning that we can talk about if you have time later. But these two people pushed the game for several years and had a lot of videos on their channels, just, I guess, waiting for the YouTube algorithm to pick them up. And I discovered one of these videos in the winter of 2016, early 2016, I should say. And I said, hey, this looks like a lot of fun. I forgot about this game, so I might want to play it again. So I replayed the game because I just rediscovered it. And I said, well, now that I'm done playing it, I kind of want to try some of these tricks that I saw them do. I went through with the cruise boosting and the sponge gliding and stuff, and eventually I just got to the point where I'm like, well, I know how all these tricks work now, so might as well just do a full run. And then that led to me streaming, because I was recording my runs on a laptop with a really small storage device, so I didn't want to waste too much storage space on there, so I started streaming the runs and people started watching them, and from there it's just history.
So how many hours do you think it took until you got your first world record? Like, how many hours of practice did you feel like you put in?
Not quite sure. I know that I played for around 2 months before I got my first one, but again, the game was like very small at the time.
Yeah.
It had like 17 people on the leaderboards. Now it has like 700 people on the leaderboards. And at this point, for the past 4.5 years, I've probably spent somewhere around between 8,500 and 9,000 hours playing this game.
Wow. That is a lot of practice, considering you keep beating your personal best.
Yeah.
like you said, you beat it twice in 1 week.
Yeah, it also goes back to the whole streaming thing, where when you're streaming and your job is to stream, you got to churn out those hours, So if you're playing the game anyway, it adds up a lot.
So when you're streaming these world record attempts, do you feel like there's an added pressure because there's an audience like watching you, or do you feel like you're into it?
At first, it probably felt that way, I'm sure, but over time, you just kind of get used to it. And I kind of look at streaming as more of like having company, where you're sitting there playing a game, somebody's there to talk to, It's nice when people ask questions about the run. People just spread jokes and stuff and memes while we're playing. Just have a good laugh, have a good time talking. And when it's time to focus up, like if I'm on record pace, like halfway through the run, it's like, okay, we know it's like serious time now, But it's fun. It's a good experience just sitting around, doing attempts, talking to people.
So about community, I wanted to talk to you about that, is the speedrunning community for this game. One would think like, in order to, get the world record, everything's competitive, but I've seen you and a bunch of people in the SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom speedrunning community actively go out of their way to help people and teach them how to do all these tricks. Like one big community helping each other, which is very interesting. Like, what do you have to, wouldn't it be the other way around where you wouldn't tell anyone how you do it?
You would think that's how it works, but typically in speedrunning culture, just for any game really, it's pretty much taboo to kind of withhold strats. They call that hiding strats. It sounds like, it's to state the obvious, like hiding strats or concealing strats. People don't like it when you find a strategy and you conceal it just to get a better time than somebody else, because ultimately the original idea of speedrunning was to push a game as far as possible, and it's a collaborative thing where people want to see the potential of the game get pushed down. So if you let the competition between players get in the way of the game's progress, it's seen as being selfish, essentially. And in our community especially, we don't, go back and forth over who has like which time and whatnot. It is very much more mostly focused on like helping people, get to the point where they can start doing runs, and if they need help learning strategies, we help them learn them as well. I spend a lot of my time making tutorials and like videos explaining the history of the game and how to get into it and so forth to make it more accessible, because ultimately the more people who have eyes on the game, the more it's going to develop and the more people who have time to work on things. So like back in the day, I used to do all my own routing, strat hunting, and I used to grind my world record down while doing all this stuff. But nowadays you have multiple different people covering all these different fields. So one person can focus on doing one thing, while the other people focus on their own topics and they all become experts at them. So next thing you know, you have all these people who are testing strategies and new routes, and though some of them are fast, some of them aren't, like the idea that there are more people around and there are more ideas being thrown around, these games progress faster. And I don't think that closing a community off and being elitist about stuff is a good formula for progressing a lot of these games.
And also, there's you have world records in 3 categories for this game, being any percent, which is completing the game at any percent needed, 100%, and new game plus. Can you tell me what all those are like?
Sure. Any percent is the one that people have been running for the past 10 years. That's just, as you said, beat the game as quickly as possible. In this game, there are 100 different golden spatulas, which are the objectives that you use to progress through the game. And when you collect all 100, that's 100%. So that would be the difference between those two. And 100% has a lot more to take on, as it would imply. Like there are many more tricks, a lot more movement that you'd have to master. NG Plus, there is no official New Game Plus in this game, but we kind of just made it up on our own as like a side category for fun. New Game Plus in games that actually do have New Game Plus are defined as ones where you are invited to restart the game, but this time with unlockables that you wouldn't have had in your first playthrough. So we kind of do that in Battle for Bikini Bottom with the use of in-game codes to unlock the unlockable moves early. So because of that, it opens up for more movement and different strategies and different routing. So it's fun, but it's not as serious as any percent or 100%. I actually have a few other world records on the extension boards, which are categories that are like for fun, but not considered as serious enough to be on the main leaderboards. And those would be all level spatulas, which is just collecting a select number of spatulas, except for like, there are spatulas you get for trading in hidden objects, and we don't get those in that run. There's a category with one of the newer tricks banned. I shouldn't say newer because now it's 2 years old now, but back when it was new, there was a big controversy over the tricks. So there was a split between any percent and the SBA, the skee ball trick, where you generate money using the skee ball machine in the pier. So there were 2 categories, and after a while, it kind of got phased out, the idea of playing the game without it, so it got moved to the extension boards. There's another one called cheap percent, which is, again, like these 3 categories I've talked about are all just kind of like less serious for fun categories that are not on the main leaderboards. But cheap percent is just beating the game as fast as possible, but you can use, back in the day they had the in-game developer codes that they would have on like the early 2000s platformers and stuff, where you like hold down triggers and like type in cheat codes with the buttons, and like certain patterns will give you certain stuff. So you can do that. You're allowed to use the cheat codes in this run, and you can beat the game in like 2 minutes. It's pretty funny.
That's pretty good. So now I want to talk to you about the documentary series you've been making about the history of speedrunning this game. First of all, what made you suddenly decide that like this needed a documentary series, and a well-done series, might I add? It's great so far.
I don't know if you know who Average Trey is, one of the former record holders in Super Mario Sunshine. He's done a lot of documentary work for that game as well. I've known him since 2016 when I first started running this game, and he'd been around since like the beginning. Like he used to watch Cole and Hazel play back in like 2015. So we met at GDQ, and we talked about the idea of making a documentary for the game back then, this is when the game had just gotten to GDQ, but a lot of people felt like that was like the last hurrah, like the game's big moment being in GDQ. Obviously, we know now that a lot more happened after that. So back then we toyed around with the idea of like, we should make a documentary on this game, because he was just starting to get into stuff like that as well. And he went on to create the Super Mario Sunshine documentary that a lot of people have seen. It says like 3 million views on YouTube. But as time went on, I realized that I wasn't ready to make a documentary yet. And like, I think the idea that we both wanted to do it together was kind of lost at some point. But 3 years after we had that conversation, I achieved the first 49-minute time in any percent. And I realized at that point, based on some of the events that just happened recently and the remake getting announced, I'm like, okay, I think it's time that we make a documentary on this game. Like, I decided that I wanted to take it on myself, where we talk about everything from the creation of the first game to the creation of the remake. Just a 10-year time span of speedrunning in general. Like, so it's 2000, we mentioned like the game, we talk about the game's release in 2003, talk about the 10 years of speedrunning, and finish it off with the remake's release. That was the idea. And for the next half year, I really kind of just struggled to motivate myself to start, because I really felt like it was too daunting of a task to take on. Like, I didn't even know how to do keyframes in video editing, and anybody who knows how to video edit, they know that's like the most basic thing. Like, I didn't even know how to do that. So I'm like, how am I gonna do all this not even knowing how to edit videos? So I'd done stuff like when I was a kid with Windows Movie Maker, but this is just next level. Like, how am I gonna make this entertaining? So there was a guy at the end of 2019, Exiled Prince, who he's involved in a bunch of communities like Super Mario 64 and The Simpsons Hit and Run and ours as well. And he said that he wanted to take on the idea of making a documentary. So he started writing a script for himself, and one of my friends, Jared's Giants, we looked into the script and we decided it wasn't really the direction that we felt was like appropriate for the community. Like, it wasn't like the tone and like the information presentation was a little bit off. So, you know, I decided to rewrite the whole thing, and it ended up being his version of it was like around like 16 pages, I think, single space. When I rewrote the documentary and took my own direction on it, like I had said I wanted to, but I wasn't sure if I could. When I ended up doing that, it came out to around 123 or something like that pages of just raw writing and research and so forth. And that's when I decided I want to split it into 4 parts, because it's just too much information. So if you've seen like the whole part 1, part 2, part 3 scheme on YouTube, like that's the reason why it's split up, because there's just so much to cover, because the information, the history of the game is just so rich and deep. There's so much to go into. And people were skeptical, like, why are there 4 parts and why is the first part an hour? But people loved the first part. They loved the second part, which again was 90 minutes covering one single year, because 2016 was so big for the game. Yeah, so I'm kind of hitting the wall again, where I'm not sure if I have what it takes to top what I've already done with a documentary series. And I'm kind of taking a little short break from it, because I want parts 3 and 4 to be spectacular. So I guess I need to find more creative inspiration to, you know, take the information and research and writing that I've done and turn it into something even better than we've already done before, like now. Yeah.
Of course. And the first 2 episodes are amazing quality, and I highly recommend it to anyone watching. But they are fantastic documentaries. I love looking at internet documentaries like that and just learning so much information because of all this, you know, a huge community surge. Now the game has been remade earlier this year, well, more like halfway into this year.
Yeah.
And you helped some development.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like
you were on IGN with that warp skip that you found out, where you beat the game in 2 minutes. Yeah.
Just to clarify, I wasn't the one who found that. I don't remember who the one was who found that, but I definitely was one of the people who helped popularize it, because like I was uploading videos on it, and obviously I have the biggest reach in the community. So like, if I upload it, people are gonna watch it, and like it spreads around. People start running the game because like, oh, it's a 2-minute speed run. I can do this, you know. It was nice little. It gets old quickly, but it was pretty crazy. I keep saying there's never gonna be another speedrun release like Rehydrated ever again.
And I guess for my final question here is, what was the community's, the speedrunning community as a whole, for SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom when they announced the remake, and how like open the developers were to talking with speedrunners?
Yeah, at first, they just announced that there was going to be something called Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, and we weren't sure if it was going to be a remaster or a remake. And to those of you who don't understand the difference between the two, a remaster would be the same game with updated graphics and polished visuals and a wider aspect ratio and so forth. And a remake is an entire rebuild from the ground up. So you have entirely different physics, entirely different tricks, therefore, because everything would be working differently. So the remake is what we got. So it's an entirely different game from the original with the levels ported in and vamped up to match the scale of the original. It's a little bit off scale. Everything's a little bit like in more closer quarters, but it's not exact, but it's close enough. So when we found that out, we were a little bit worried because we're thinking to ourselves, oh, it's not going to have cruise boosting and all the iconic stuff that gets talked about in the documentary. It's going to be a different game. But ultimately, I think it was to its benefit because it is an entirely different game. And if it were the same game, it'd be boring to have the same game played, two of the same games played by the same people. It probably would have divided the community a little bit. The fact that they're two different games ended up being a blessing in disguise because, the original game wasn't going to get something like a warp to the end of the game. That was never going to happen. That was like a once in a lifetime experience for us. So we got to do that for a couple of days and it was fun. We had the other version of the run where we don't use the warp to beat the game. So it has all of its own unique tricks and unique moves. It's pretty much, it's a pretty decent run. It's not an amazing run like the original game, but it's good enough to have its own small little people like community surrounding the game, like a sub community within the larger community that plays both games. Because you see, when the game first came out, we were a little bit split, and I was worried, like, is it going to tear us up if we have half the people in the community playing one game and half playing the other? But now we kind of have a dynamic where a lot of the people who played Rehydrated are coming back to the original game, and when people get burned out of the original, they're going to give the remake a try and so forth. So it's nice that they both serve their own purposes and have their own, little tastes that people can get into. They're not stepping on each other's toes. And that goes with the community interaction as well. Like, people aren't really fighting over which game is better and like which one's better for speedrunning and so forth. People are pretty respectful of both types of players in both games. And that's all I could really ask for. I'm just happy that things worked out and that people are being mature about everything, because there are a lot of gaming communities that have a hard time doing that. Because, it's just gaming on the internet. People can just say what they want and get away with it a lot of the time. So I'm just happy that people are being respectful and ultimately friendly, and something that we didn't know how it was going to go. It's very surprising, and I'm happy about it.
Of course. So that's about all the questions I've had for you. Thank you so much for your time. Now, if you want to plug where all our audience could find you.
Sure, you can find me on twitch.tv/SHiFT if you want to watch me live, but if that's not your taste, if you don't got enough time in the day to do that, you can watch some of my shorter videos on youtube.com/ShiftSS. Those are both fine. And if you want to watch a documentary, you can search Battle for Bikini Bottom documentary on Google or BFBB documentary, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. The first part is an hour long if you want to get 5 years of history in an hour and learn a little bit about the origins of the game and where it came from, how it was received when it originally came out, what happened to cause it to go out of popularity and then rise back again. It's all in there. So the full thing is 2.5 hours long so far, but if you don't like part one, all good. You'll still get plenty of information in that one. And hope you enjoy if you end up checking it out.
All right, perfect. And that was our interview with SHiFT on DMC. Come back and check back for some more later, because hopefully this does well. And I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.